In this video, I'm going to talk about the Sony CCU-M7. This is basically a control panel and power supply for various models of Sony broadcast video cameras used in the 1980s or thereabouts. Before I go further, I just want to share some background. In my previous video, I talked about the remote control that goes with this camera control unit and the camera. But it was actually the CCU that I got first. I found it in a secondhand shop, and I figured for the price, it was really cheap. For the price, I can just take it apart, and there's knobs and potentiometers, and there's a power supply inside, and there's various components I might be able to use. So I bought it, and not really thinking about anything more than that. But later, when I opened it up, I found that actually it has a processor and removable EEPROM that means I can easily program it. I did, of course, look online for information about the processor, but I found very little, really only the datasheet and a kind of software programming manual, which actually it's lucky that I found that, because with that I was able to produce my own assembler and disassembler. So I was able to compile assemble a simple program, and also I was able to read the ROM and disassemble it, so I can have a look at the code that's running on this and on the remote, of course. So one of the initial goals I have for this channel is to kind of document the process of reverse engineering and writing code to turn these old bits of what is arguably junk into something hopefully more interesting. Moving on. Let me just flip this up so you can see the front. So the controls on the front are very similar to the ones on the remote control, for obvious reasons. But there are a few added additional controls, as well as, for instance, a jack for the intercom and other things. A call button. I guess that's for the intercom as well. And on the back are all of the connectors. That big one there is for the camera. And most of the others are for various video signals, power, that sort of thing. All right, let me show you the inside. How did that get in there? Anyway, you can see the power supply takes up a good half of the space in here, because it does power the camera and the remote and potentially other parts of the system as well, in addition to just the stuff that's in here. There's the front panel board, and there's another board under here. This top one is a bunch of video circuits, like amplifiers and mixers and I don't really know what. But let me take these screws out and show you the underside. So it turns out I don't need to take the screws out because I already took the screws out previously. How convenient. And this just opens up like this. Again, this board has a lot of some video amplifier circuits and some stuff to do with synchronizing the video signal with an external video signal. Some analog stuff I don't really comprehend too well. So this is the processor, and there's the ROM. Again, this is the same model processor that's used in the remote control. Just this one is the through-hole version, and the remote control has the surface mount version, presumably for space reasons. Over here there's a non-volatile memory chip, which stores data for the scene file, which you can save and recall from the front panel. Over here, this is pretty interesting, there's a character generator, so this is how it generates either an on-screen menu or it puts text on the screen. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. I haven't really observed the output from this yet. This resistor ladder here is used by the processor to form a rudimentary analog to digital converter to read all of the analog inputs, the potentiometers, on the front end. So that's kind of cool. There's a lot of multiplexers on the underside of this board that allow the processor to read any of the things on the front end. So this would appear to be a backup battery or maybe a capacitor. I'm not really sure. I think it's actually a capacitor. When I first got this and took it apart, I took out this whole board and disconnected all the connectors and took it out. Even though I thought putting it back in would be difficult, I assumed I wouldn't actually figure out how to use this as a complete unit. But that was before I found the service manual. Having found the service manual, I now have a much clearer picture of what things do and how to work with how to write code for the processor, I guess. And actually, the connectors, I put this off for like a week. I put off putting the board back in for like a week because I thought, oh my God, it's going to be so difficult finding all the connectors. I don't know if you can see very well here, but there's a lot of connectors and a lot of wires coming in. So I wasn't sure I was going to get it put back together correctly, but it turns out they're all numbered. So that part was easy. So let's see, can we see the back of this board here? Sort of. Get a better camera angle. On the back of this board is, these are almost entirely multiplexers, shift registers, buffers, for interacting with the switches and potentiometers and LEDs on the front panel. There's some other stuff, but that's what most of this stuff is. Here again are the video amplifiers, analog magic for dealing with video signals. So I have yet to try to reprogram the CCU, but honestly I think it's there's a lot of cool building blocks here. There's this character generator. It'd be really cool to be able to produce arbitrary text on top of a video signal. And there's a little bit of memory, and it's got a decent power supply. So a lot of possibilities there. One thing that's also interesting is that as one might imagine, the remote and the CCU and the camera they all share a couple of serial data lines. And one thing that kind of surprised me is that the incoming data line is actually connected to the interrupt pin on the microcontroller. Even though the processor has a dedicated serial communication pins, has like 2 or 3 dedicated pins for that purpose, and a peripheral, for doing serial communication, they've chosen to use just some generic I/O pin for the output and the interrupt pin for the input, so that I guess it makes it easier somehow doing things asynchronously. Anyway, obviously it means you can't use the interrupt pin for anything else, but it's kind of a cool strategy that I had never really thought of before. So that was an introduction to the Sony CCU-M7. In the future, I hope to write some program that makes it do something a little more interesting than just being a weight on my workbench. And I hope that's entertaining for you as well. See you next time.